Hi, this is Kris Peters for the Hampton History Museum. Since we were unable to host our Hampton Heritage Day event in person this year, we decided we wanted to bring one of our educational activities to you. So today I'm going to take a couple of minutes to talk about Kecoughtan Agriculture. Now, the Kecoughtan Indians grew lots of different plants in coastal Virginia before the arrival of Europeans, but the foundation of their agriculture was centered on three plants: corn, beans, and squash. And these were grown across North America, but they did not originate here in coastal Virginia. So in order to get these plants here, the Kecoughtan Indians and other Powhatan tribes had to trade the resources that they had available locally to get them. So by talking about agriculture, we also get to talk about the trade networks that existed across North America before the arrival of Europeans. Now here in Tidewater, Virginia, they would have had access to a lot of seafood, and so resources like shells and dried or smoked oysters and fish would have been the main resource that they're trading to the inland areas of the continent. Shells would have been used for making beads like the kind you see on this necklace, and in exchange for seafood and seafood products, they would have gotten things like stone for making tools and weapons. This is an arrow point. They would have traded to get copper from up around the Great Lakes for making jewelry. And these items would have been brought all the way across the continent by foot. So the trade networks that existed before Europeans arrived here were quite extensive. Now, once those plants had made it to coastal Virginia, the Kecoughtan Indians and the Powhatan tribes around them were really good at using them. They would have used tools like the hoe on the table here, which is made from a deer shoulder bone, a deer scapula. So they would use hoes like this to mound up earth. They would use digging sticks that have just been sharpened and hardened in a fire to break up earth, similar to using a pickaxe. And they would break up the earth, they would mound it, and then they would plant their seeds in these short, wide mounds. So tools like this would have been used for working the earth. Now, once they've created a mound, which is usually going to be about 2 or 3 feet across and maybe about 6 or 8 inches high, they would plant these crops together. And this is what we call companion planting. So they would start by planting the corn in the center of the mound. Once the corn is sprouted and started to grow a little bit, they would plant the beans. Beans are really important because pretty much every variety of beans out there fix nitrogen in the soil. They actually take nitrogen out of the air and put it into the soil, which helps the other plants grow. They can also climb, if they're a vining bean, climb up the corn stalk for support. And then once the beans have sprouted, the squash gets planted around them. Now the squash has wide leaves and they'll shade the ground. So this is going to keep grass and other weeds from growing on these mounds and make the agricultural products grow better. So these three plants were often planted together in mounds, and we've got seeds for them today so that you can plant these at home. Now we have kits available here at the museum, which can be reserved by calling the museum. And each kit contains the materials needed to start these three plants. So each one's going to include a couple of small peat pots, peat starter pots, a small bag of soil, and a seed packet. You may want to include a couple of tools from at home as well, something to poke down into the soil to put your seeds in. You'll need some way to water them in, and then a scoop or a shovel of some kind to handle the dirt. Now each kit is also going to include a little bit of background information about companion planting and a recipe to use these plants in a single dish. So this is for a fall harvest type vegetable stew. So each of these kits contains the components needed for starting these plants, and that would be done this way. You need to find some kind of container to put the peat pots in and keep them stable. And then you're going to take the potting soil that's included in each kit, and you're either going to scoop it out, or if you can, just sprinkle it out of the bag into each of the pots. And this doesn't have to be really neat. You just need to get it into the pots level to the top. Once you've got your soil into the pots, you want to spread it out even. And then take your seeds out. Now we've included a few extra seeds because you don't know if all of them will germinate. But with the peat pots, you're going to take your pen or pencil or whatever tool you've got, and you're going to poke a small hole in the center. Then you're going to drop your seeds in. You want to take 2 of each seed. So we're going to put 1 crookneck squash, 1 corn seed, and 1 black bean in each of the starters. Cover it up. And then we're going to water them in. So I've taken a water bottle and I've just put a couple of holes in the lid to allow the water to dribble out. And so now I can just squeeze some of that water out and water in my pot, my little peat pots. Once you've started, you're going to let it sit for a moment. You'll add a little bit more soil to the top and make sure that it's nice and level. And now that the water has soaked into it, it will take a little bit more water. If you only water it once, the soil may not soak all the water up. Some of it will run right through. Now it's important to make sure that you do this inside a container because the water is going to come out the bottom. So if you do this on your dining room table or your kitchen counter, you will get dirt and dirty water running out the bottom. All right, and then once you've got them into the pots, you're going to put this in a window and let it sit for a few days. Once they've started to sprout, they can be transplanted into a container or into the ground. We've included a few extra seeds so that if you skip this part and plant them straight into the ground, you've got a few extras to make sure that everything germinates. So that's how the Kecoughtan Indians handled their agricultural needs 400, 500, 600 years ago. They were farming for a very long time before Europeans arrived here. And these are plants that we still eat today. In fact, a lot of the plants that were cultivated by Virginia Indian and Native American tribes across the continent are still a big part of modern diets around the world today. So, thank you for joining me. This has been Kris Peters for the Hampton History Museum.